welcome back to the second day of the European Degree Forum. I hope you had a productive afternoon of discussions and exchanges. Today we will focus on turning discussions into a concrete outcome, the Florence Pledge. It will outline possible actions for each stakeholder to make the joint European degree label a success and help pave the way for a possible joint European degree, pending, of course, the Council's final decision on this topic. We will begin this morning with a presentation and exchange on the findings of the breakout sessions. I would like to invite on stage the moderator, Peter Kreco, Policy Leader Fellow of the European University Institute's Florence School of Transnational Governance. Welcome. He will be joined by the moderators and co-facilitators of yesterday's breakout sessions. Please give a warm welcome to Yannis Kassoulidis, Senior Educational Officer at the Department of Higher Education of the Cyprus Ministry of Education, Sport and Youth, Josephine Van Zeven, Provost for Education and Academic Staff Development at the European University Institute, Barbara Del Sala, Institutional Affairs Director at Baker Hughes, Stefan Geifes, Vice President of the Academic Cooperation Association and Director of the National Agency for Erasmus Plus in Germany. Stefan was co-facilitating his session with Giacomo Calzolari, Provost for Research and External Relations at the European University Institute, who is unfortunately unable to join us today due to another commitment. Last but not least, we have Joan Guardia Olmos, Rector of the University of Barcelona Charm EU Alliance, and Dominika Gudzik, Education and Youth Coordinator at Erasmus Student Network. I will now hand over to our moderator, Peter Kreco. Thank you.
So, good morning to all of you, and hope you enjoyed the first day of the conference, and thank you for all of you for coming here in this early hour, and hope you also enjoyed the light 8-course dinner during the evening. And so today's discussion, as it was kindly said already, will be about the results of the solutions labs yesterday. So each representatives of one solution lab are going to talk for about 8 minutes on the main findings that you all have created yesterday. So they are going to be the voice of the people in terms of summarizing the very rich findings you had in the breakup groups. And then, if hopefully we are going to have a bit more time, they can also reflect on each other's findings. So I would go by the order that has been highlighted in the program, because also you will have the chance to reflect on the main findings and the main solutions that are summarized by the speakers through Slido, and you will have QR codes on which you can access and then write reflections on the findings, so you will be also involved. So without further ado, I will go by the order that is highlighted in the program. And first, I would like to ask Dominika Guzmik to summarize the findings of the breakout group session, making the joint European degree label inclusive and accessible to all. So Dominika, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning everyone. I am very pleased to present the outcomes of Solution Lab 3 on ensuring inclusiveness and accessibility in European degree. So our discussion in fact centered on quite simple answer and question. How do we make sure that the European degree is accessible to all students, not only those who already have the resources, the networks, or simply the flexibility to participate in them? And across the 3 breakout groups, we come up with, we hope, clear and actionable solutions that will hopefully significantly strengthen the inclusiveness of joint European degree label. Our first proposal is the creation of a skills center embedded in every consortium delivering European degree label. Its mission would be to ensure that all students, despite their background, are well prepared academically, linguistically, and culturally before and during their mobility. So it would cover 3 areas: cultural and mobility onboarding, to ensure that transition between universities and institutions is as smooth as possible. Then the language learning, to lower the linguistic barriers, to allow students to participate in academic and social life to its fullest. And finally, academic and leadership skills, to ensure that they can thrive academically in all institutions on the same level. So our second proposal is a delivery of tailored and coordinated support services on consortium level, designed around the diverse needs of the students today. So this includes accessible academic advising, mentoring, and counseling. And in here we also would like to highlight career counseling as well. Peer networks, whether programs alumni or ambassadors, and also a buddy system that allow peer-to-peer support. Then support with things like housing and visa and general administration, such as registration even for the single courses. Concerning students with disabilities, we believe that a single assessment is the way to go, not assessment carried on the each and every institution. Also, the data of students with disabilities should be safely stored, and consortia should have minimum level accessibility standards the same everywhere. And finally, the timely provision of information to students before the program will start, before they will even sign up for it, it's quite crucial to ensure that they will actually be aware to what they are committing themselves. And finally, the third solution, so participants very strongly agreed that financial barriers remain joint degree programs a single most decisive factor in joining them. So therefore we would like to propose to create a unified European system for cost compensation. This would ideally cover tuition fees, to harmonize them, to introduce any sort of necessary waivers across the consortium. We also believe that compensation for differences in cost of living is quite crucial, possibly also to include in grants adjustments or that reflect on high-cost destinations that obviously are there. And finally, the inclusion top-ups for the students with fewer needs could also be useful to ensure the proper accessibility of programs. So to conclude, those 3 proposals, skill-centered, tailored support for students and unified European cost compensation system, they directly address the barriers that students are facing, whether they are academic, administrative, personal, or financial. So we believe those 3 are the way to go. So thank you so much, and yes, in case of question, feel free to approach us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dominika, because you have you just used the time very wisely and you concisely summarized. I would have one follow-up question. Have been there any issues in the discussion group that have provoked, let's say, more debates, disagreements, or issues that were found to be a bit more controversial?
Yes, so of course we had many more ideas and we discovered many more challenges than those 3 we mentioned in here. One of them especially were different mobility formats, because of course 6 months, the usual way, may not be that inclusive and accessible to all students. So implementing blended mobilities, virtual mobilities, for example, for universities that do not have physical campuses, short-term mobilities. So that was something that definitely sparked our interest and possibly could explore even deeper.
Thank you very much. Yes, okay. So I would like to give the floor now to Stefan Geifers to summarize the findings of breakout session 3, which was Lab 2, a joint European degree label to attract and retain talent. So Stefan's floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Peter. Good morning, everybody. We came out with a clear message in this group that the participants are convinced that joint programs and the European degree label has the potential to retain and attract students in and to Europe. On the retention level, the participants agreed that it can retain students within Europe and not going abroad, but the retention perspective is also important for countries within Europe who have a brain drain challenge, and in these cases, the people who are doing a European degree in 2 European countries may also go back to their country of origin. And for the attraction perspective, it was important to underline that these cohorts of students in European degree label joint programs should be from Europe and abroad, not only for students from abroad. To assure the full potential of the rollout of the European degree label in joint programs, 3 conditions are necessary at the level of the higher education institutions, at the level of marketing for studies, and at the political level. First, at the higher education institution, it has been underlined that in the design of the European degree label programs, one should think of communication from the beginning on, should co-create the contents also with the future employers, should think of accompanying the students in this very demanding study programs, and think of ambassadors, buddy programs, and alumni structures. Second, we agreed that the communication, the marketing on the European degree label should be integrated in national and European study-in programs. We are all active around the world to promote studies in Europe, and with the highlights we have, but we also should, if we go for the European degree label, say that we have them, as well as we should promote the European University Alliances in our worldwide marketing campaigns for studying in Europe. The third point is at the political level. The participants agreed and underlined the importance of a certain climate of conditions that are necessary to attract these students and to follow up what we know why students are choosing Europe as a study destination. And as Pia told us yesterday, the numbers are very good and they are even increasing. But we want even to become better as we are Europeans. Among these conditions, we see that the affordability of studies are important at the tuition level, but also at the living cost level. This can be by housing, you mentioned that, programs, but also by grants. And another point is that it has to be accessible. And for international students to come to Europe, there is this small piece of paper we call visa. And it is not so easy to become from every country to every country in Europe. So we also might think of giving a priority of European degree label joint programs for visa applications. At the end, we all were convinced that we should underline the definition of what we understand among European in the European degree label. And we do not interfere into the discussion of the criteria, but just to underline what we think what Europe makes us unique. It is our history, painful in the past, but peaceful at present times. It's our values, and we should underline our way of life in Europe, our understanding that in Europe, when we speak of excellence, we always think of integration and inclusion, and when we speak of inclusion, we always think of excellence at the same time. This makes our European way of life, our model, and to sum it up, the group considered education as a public good. Education as a public good in a European degree label has a chance to attract and to retain students, talents, to our higher education institutions. These were the results of our group, which we wanted to present it to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And I would just encourage you to go to Slido and reflect. And we can see that you have already put important words that as reflection of what has been said here regarding the Solutions Lab. But if even more of you can reflect even better. And at this moment, because this is a rare moment to have as a moderator, that the speakers do not use up their time of speaking, I would just ask also Joan Gardia almost to reflect, or maybe a bit comment or complement what Dominika have said. I know that you probably have to leave a bit earlier, so I would like to give some time for you to reflect and summarize some thoughts.
Thanks very much. Good morning to everyone. So it's difficult to add anything interesting after the Dominika presentation, but I want to remember only the three main points that we just discussed yesterday in terms to reinforce the Dominika's presentation. So the first idea is obviously to ensure enough budget money in terms to make feasible a very interesting program, a very ambitious program. So when we are talking about money, we are talking about the conditions to generate some kind of compensation structure in Europe in order to avoid the dramatical differences in terms of tuition fees, in terms of living costs, etc., between the member states. The second question to reinforce is the idea of to design a common area in terms to generate a unique definition of inclusion. So we detected yesterday several sensibilities, several points of view, differences between our conceptions in terms to define inclusion, to define inclusive university, to define healthy university, to define inclusion activity. So we need a very hard work in order to generate a common definition, a common space, a common limits to the concept of university and inclusion. And finally, a simple word to reinforce the same idea, simplification. Simplification intends to be feasible and easy, all these concepts, all these activities, and to manage the academic responsibility and the academic recognition. Basically, simplification in all this new scenario. Very simple.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So the next session to summarize would be the enhancing skills to ensure attractiveness for industry and society. And Josephine Van Seben would be the speaker of this Solution Lab. So Josephine, the floor is yours, and feel free to use your 8 minutes.
Okay, well, that's a very dangerous invitation, but I will do my best. Maybe just to give a little bit of context to our lab. So our lab was co-facilitated by myself and Barbara Del Sala, who is a representative of Baker Hughes, so an industry representative. And I'm mentioning this because, of course, having a discussion about the relevance and added value of the European degree for industry and society ideally also has industry representation present. So our group was very mixed. We had educators, academics, we had student representatives, we had representatives from university administration, We had governmental representatives, but apart from Barbara, we didn't have many that represented the industry perspective. So I want to mention this because while I feel that the outcomes were actually incredibly interesting and I think quite actionable, I think this is something to keep in mind also moving forward, that dialogue really has to be established. So we had, to my surprise, I have to admit, there were many diverse ideas and experiences on this dossier, but there was also a very high level of consensus on the points that eventually materialized from our discussions. And concretely, there were 5 of these. So the first question that we focused on was, what skills do we think may need to be prioritized in a European degree, but also what are the skills on which a European degree can have a, let's say, added value or competitive edge over other existing degrees. And we found 3 main types of skills that we thought fell in that category. One is the fact that what many perceive to be needed is additional focus naturally on STEM-related skills, but at the same time contextualizing these skills very clearly with the ethical, legal and social aspects of STEM. So really making sure that the degrees that we're offering offer not only technical skills, but also the ability for students to then be able to place those skills within a societal, legal and ethical context. The second category of skills that we discussed had to do much more with managerial and transversal skills. So really ensuring that, there are skills that are not necessarily focused on creating one particular kind of job profile, but really equip students with a broad range of skills. And then finally, language came up many times, and I think this also relates to what Stefan mentioned about what it means to be a European degree, this multilingualism, being able to experience other languages in different ways by maybe physically being in the country where that language is spoken. This was also something that came up several times. Now, the second point that on which again there was very high consensus was that a European degree, and I think again this builds on what was mentioned earlier regarding the European dimension of these degrees, was that these degrees are not only there to create great labor market resources, but also that there's a societal relevance to them, and that really lies in a piece of citizenship education, a piece of civil values that we may want to try to reinforce. Well, reinforce, I think, through this degree. Maybe to preempt one of the questions that Peter may ask, were there also difficulties? Yes, we did also, especially on this point, recognize that naturally, speaking of European values, I have to admit it's been quite nice for me over the past 2 days to be among people who seem to have very similar European values to the ones that I hold. But I think in the end, it's no secret that we have at this stage also a debate about what European values are and how they should be incorporated, especially in something as sensitive as our education curricula. So we did see a challenge there in deciding what these values might be and who would be deciding that. So this is something that was a bit of an open question. The third point related to how we then balance the interests of industry, but also of other social actors, and the development of curricula. And I think here it was very clear that the most promising and I think also long-standing solution to this is to continue our tradition of evidence-based and research-led education and curricula design, and have that be sort of the bottom-up driver of the design of these programs, while of course continuing this dialogue that I mentioned before with these other social actors. The fourth point related more to success stories and positive experiences that were raised by several of our participants. So, for example, incubators and innovation labs were something that where the collaboration between industry and academia was seen as a very fruitful and productive way for students to experience those two worlds in the same space, which led to very promising outcomes. And then the final and fifth point is one that maybe went slightly beyond what we initially had expected to discuss in this group, but I think is worth bringing up here. It was a discussion also about lifelong learning and sort of the more intergenerational sort of aspect of these kind of programs, and the fact that, you know, as our population in the European Union continues to age and people have a productive working life for longer, how do we perhaps situate the need for a sort of midlife, you know, change in career? I mean, I think Peter actually is in a way an interesting, and his program is an interesting illustration of this, right? The Policy Leader Fellows in a way have that opportunity to reflect when they're at the Florence School of Transnational Governance. But more generally, how could we perhaps create degrees that also cater to that kind of population, and to really ensure that the European degree is not only there at the start of one's career, but maybe also something that could be there at a later stage, of course, then requiring different kind of skills and different kinds of educational techniques. So I think that was probably 8 minutes. If not, I'm happy to continue, but it was really a wonderful lab, and I want to thank again the participants who provided really excellent inputs for this discussion.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for the introduction. I just would have one follow-up question. You touched up, and it would be regarding the third point you mentioned, how to balance industry demands and involvement in creating and elaborating the curriculum, and to participate in the education with all the ethical demands of a university, of producing to a certain extent neutral knowledge, in the sense that it can be used even beyond industry. And also there is I think an additional question that yeah, in a very fastly changing world, there can be also dangers of involving industry actors too much in education, in the sense that maybe the knowledge that is relevant, very relevant today, will be totally irrelevant tomorrow. And I assume that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for all these problems, but if you can elaborate on it a bit more, I think it might be useful.
No, thank you. I mean, this was something that absolutely was reflected also in our discussions, because, you know, how do we future-proof the skills that we're going to give to these students, given the very rapid changes now, I think, across all domains. And I think this is also where the sort of more transversal and managerial skills discussion came back, right? So to prepare people more, and also actually the ELSA dimensions of STEM, right? To really encourage more this critical thinking and this human perspective, in a way, to all the transformations that were currently ongoing, rather than really focusing on very specific skill sets, because this is also something which ultimately, you know, that level of expertise you can also gain while working, right? I mean, there's also, I think, you know, we don't stop learning at the moment that we are employed, and I think this is something that, you know, everybody was very aware of. Maybe more generally, as to this question of how to balance this input, I think, you know, I think there was a broad understanding that the idea of neutral knowledge is at this point a very difficult thing to maintain, right? I mean, even in academia, I think we are all, you know, we are human, we have our own biases. I think this is simply a reality and values. And I think actually, to be honest, I think it was a very open statement that, in a way, this is not a completely neutral or objective exercise, right? I mean, we are talking very openly about this being a European degree, speaking to European values. And I think one of the things that we very clearly discussed was also how this links to competitiveness, and how this links to how we want to situate this degree with respect to competitiveness. And in our discussions, I think there was a very clear sense that competitiveness can be defined also in a European sense. We do not have to define competitiveness vis-a-vis, for example, the United States or China, but actually I mean, I think this was mentioned also yesterday, these degrees are about people's lives and people's livelihoods, and I think the European way of life is something that is distinct in how we perceive it, and therefore also this neutrality, I don't think, was what we were striving for. I think we were striving for a reflection of a European understanding of what it means to be socially and productive and valuable. So maybe a final point on this, how do we then link this to industry? I think also here, the European Union has a pretty clear framework, because we do not, I think, believe that the only societal value of industry is profit, right? We have very clear ESG sort of responsibilities about, there is a corporate social responsibility that I think we're also, shaping at the same time. So again, I think these debates need to take place in that context, and universities are a part of that debate in shaping our workforce.
Yeah, thank you very much. And last but not least, I would turn you to Yanis Kasoulides to summarize the findings of the high-level solutions group. So we went in the reverse order of abstraction, and finally we have some kind as a summary also the results of the high-level policy solutions lab.
So thank you, Peter, and good morning, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of presenting the key recommendations that emerged from the high-level solutions session that we had yesterday, with a particular focus on how the Florence Pledge can genuinely drive progress towards the establishment of a joint degree label. These recommendations were the result of rich discussions and thoughtful reflections shared by a diverse group of contributors, including institutional representatives, students, European stakeholder organizations, and ministerial officials. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude and warmest thanks to our session panelists, Timothée Turi, Louise Deroux, Alessandro Arienzo, and last but certainly not least, Verpi Laukanen. Their insightful contributions, constructive perspectives, and collaborative spirit were invaluable, and they truly made my role during the session much smoother and more enjoyable. So thank you very much. During our session yesterday, we presented a number of Slido questions to get an essence of the participants group, who were the people in the room actually. And so please allow me to give you an idea of the percentage of the representatives of each category. First, not surprisingly, European University Alliances representatives dominated the room. Almost 50% of them were present there. We had 20% of stakeholders and organizations representatives. Only 10% of governmental voices were there. One of them was myself. I didn't use the Slido, so maybe the percentage is 12%. We have a small and modest representation of students, only 5%. Maybe a couple of students were with us, but their contribution was very essential at the session. And we had also around 17-20% of other people joining our session, probably practitioners, independent experts, or professionals from related fields. So to move to our recommendations, our first recommendation speaks directly to what many of us recognize as the most persistent and limited barrier, that is the regulatory and administrative landscape that surrounds joint programs. Today, across Europe, institutions are still required to navigate vastly different rules, procedures, and accreditation systems, differences that slow down innovation and place an overwhelming administrative burden on universities. That is why our proposed commitment calls for a renewed sense of partnership between governments and higher education institutions, one grounded in ambition and a shared responsibility to remove these legal and administrative obstacles. Step by step, this means aligning national qualification frameworks, streamlining recognition procedures, and creating transparent and reliable accreditation pathways. Equally important is the need to strengthen trust among quality assurance agencies. Although many already follow the same European standards and guidelines, cross-recognition is still far from automatic. By deepening mutual trust and fostering consistent cross-border cooperation, we can make mobility, collaboration, and joint programs delivery not only easier, but truly natural. The second recommendation centers on a principle that lies at the heart of the European higher education area: equity, and true accessibility. Throughout our discussions, students were remarkably clear and honest about the realities they face. For many, mobility is still far from a seamless experience. They encounter practical barriers at every turn, struggles in finding affordable housing. We heard that before in the first presentation. Academic calendars that simply do not align across institutions, complicated registration procedures, and financial limitations that make mobility feel like a privilege rather than a right. At the same time, smaller or less resort institutions expressed a deep concern that without additional support, they risk being excluded from joint degree landscape. These institutions are eager to contribute, but they need the tools, the resources, and stability to do so on equal footing. If we want a truly inclusive European higher education area, we cannot allow institutional inequalities to become structural barriers. For these reasons, we propose a pledge commitment that firmly places fairness at its core. This means supporting students financially, not only through mobility structures, but also through practical housing solutions and simplified administrative procedures that remove unnecessary burdens. Supporting institutions, especially those with fewer resources, through targeted funding, capacity building initiatives, and hands-on technical assistance that empowers them to participate fully and confidently in joint programs. Last but not least, embedding structural student co-decision roles, ensuring that students are not just beneficiaries of joint programs, but genuine partners in shaping and evaluating them. Our third recommendation highlights an essential dimension of the joint degree label, ensuring that it is not only academically rigorous, but also widely recognized and valued beyond the walls of academia. Throughout the session, participants emphasized that labor market recognition remains uncertain. This gap between academic innovation and labor market expectations is a barrier we cannot afford to overlook. That is why our commitment focuses on fostering stronger, more structured collaboration with employers and industry partners. This means inviting them into the curriculum design process, promoting high-quality internship opportunities across borders, and ensuring that the skills and competencies developed through joint programs genuinely reflect labor market and society needs. Moreover, we propose significantly increasing the visibility and clarity of the European joint degree label. Students, employers, and the wider public must be able to recognize what the label stands for: high-quality international cooperation and a learning experience that equips graduates with the skills to thrive in a connected and a rapidly changing world. Clear, accessible communication of learning outcomes and competencies will be the key to strengthening trust, enhancing employability, and ensuring that graduates holding a joint European degree are seen as assets in any professional context. At the end of the day, this recommendation is about building bridges between higher education and the labor market, between innovation and recognition, and between the ambitions of students and the opportunities they deserve. We shared the Slido question yesterday just to estimate the optimism level of the people in the room. Overall sentiment is cautiously positive. The average score given per participant was 6.5 out of 10. We used a scale from 1 to 10 to see how optimistic they are about the success of the European joint degree label. So we got a lot of 10s there. Around 20% of respondents placed themselves at the midpoint score between 5 and 6, reflecting balance and certain expectations. 18% scored at 2. You don't have the, the chart here. I have it in front of me. And 15% at 3, indicating a double group of skepticists who doubt the feasibility of the initiative. On the other hand, 10% each scored at 4, 5, and 6, so a cluster of moderate optimism. And higher optimism scores 7 to 10 was less common with smaller percentages, but we still had them there. The results suggest that while there is a confidence in the idea, many participants rightfully remain cautious, pointing to unresolved challenges they still live. The optimism is tempered by realism, with only a minority expressing strong confidence in success. So by that, I reached to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yanis. And also, thank you for mentioning the pledge as well, because in the upcoming session moderated by Susanna Konze, drafting the Florence Pledge will be the main topic of the discussion, and all the recommendations have came up will be on the table like them. But so what has been just told by the rapporteurs will find a way to a pledge or already included in the draft. So, given that we that our speakers were so diligently keeping their time limits, we have some time for follow-up discussions. So I would invite the speakers to reflect on each other's points, or if it's possible, yes. So I would like to invite also the members of the audience to raise questions regarding the solutions and also some of the dilemma that have been raised during the summary of the breakout groups and solution labs. And also, if you feel that something important that has been mentioned in the group has, due to time constraints, were not mentioned here in the panel, feel free to throw it into the discussion as well. So I've seen a raised hand over there. Could someone help to bring the mic? If not, then okay.
Thanks a lot. So this is Rafa Toledo from European University of Technology Alliance. Well, there are many things that they are a bit surprising to me, if I'm honest. Maybe I had too high expectations, but one thing that is really throwing me deeply is that it seems to be a reopening discussion about the European values, which is like the treaty, right? So is it really a conversation that is being pushed, that we are reconsidering the European values? It is, and is this part of the conclusion of the pledge? I will be deeply disappointed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your remark. Josephine, would you like to reflect?
Yeah, I'll, if you don't mind, I'll respond because I think I'm the one who brought this up, I think, most explicitly. And I would like to clarify because my intention was not to say that we are here to reevaluate or reassess or even renegotiate in any way the European values. I think you're completely right by referring to the European treaties and the articles there that very clearly set out, not actually only the treaties, but also the charter that I think set out our values. However, I think it would be at the same time be naive to assume that the interpretation of each of these values in every member state is the same, right? And I think that was something that came out in our discussions, that what does dignity mean in every member state? What does freedom mean in every member state? Now, we do have a European answer to this. The European Court of Justice has given, interpretation of these words as well in different contexts. But I think what we were referring to in our discussions is simply the lived reality of many Europeans, where there are divergences between how those values are interpreted and applied now in different member states. And so that's the only thing I'm trying to discuss. As to the European degree, I think it was seen as an opportunity to reinforce what is, I think, the broadest understanding of those values and the interpretation of those values given at the European level. So that is not up for debate. The only thing is that between that expression of intent and the actual implementation of that, there may be a slightly longer road to go than we would like to see. So that, I think that's what I try to express in my summary.
Thank you, Josephine. Stefan, would you also say a few words?
The European values have also been a point of discussion in our group on how far does the European way of life attract people from abroad. And it was from the student side that it was said that we live in Europe in a certain way of peace and security, and that is a value by itself. And then the discussion came up that all this is built on the European values. What you said, Josephine, some colleagues said that these values are questions in some member states. This is unfortunately a reality, but should not guide our discussions here. We stand for a European degree label, and European means what has been signed in the treaties. I'm not speaking of the criteria for the European degree label. I'm speaking of the spirit to attract people to come to Europe. And I think the European values are therefore fundamental. And if we want to promote a joint program named European degree label at an international label, we have to underline that we have values. This is anti-discrimination, this is liberty, this is peace, this is inclusion, and all the other points. And in our group, although we know that these values are questioned in some member states at this time, we underline the importance to use this for the international marketing of the label. This is the conclusion from our group.
Thank you, Stefan. Any other questions you might have? There's a hand over there.
Thank you. Good morning. Not really a question, but...
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to say, please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Chiara Finocchietti. I'm from CIME, the Italian ENIC Network Center, and I'm here as president of the ENIC Network, the Network of National Information Center in Europe. I was just a very quick comment on the point on recognition. This was also a recurrent topic. I think maybe we can, what we can say is that actually we are speaking about two typologies of recognition that we are mutually linked and mutually reinforcing each other. One is the formal recognition, and for this, of course, we need all the flag in place, the Bologna tools fully implemented and applied to European degrees, QA, etc. But also social recognition. Recognition of the value of this qualification, why this is important, what is the added value. We've been discussing about co-design with industries, with employers, recognition by the labor market, by the society, and also this discourse on value. I think it's relevant for this social recognition of the value of the European degree. And we know that one reinforces each other, because if the social recognition is strong, then there will be also a strong push to make it easily and formally recognized, and the other way around. If it's easy to have to spend this qualification, then this will also help to increase to understand the impact. So just to, I think it's important when we speak about recognition that we keep these two pieces of the discourse together. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's a pretty important remark. Anyone from the panel would you like to reflect on that? Josephine?
Yeah, thank you, Chiara. Chiara was also in Lab 1, so we had really wonderful discussions about this. And I just wanted to add one thing that was added in our lab, which we didn't put in the first 5 outcomes, but I think in a way it also speaks to this. Part of the let's call it informal or social recognition of a degree also builds, of course, on the alumni of such a degree and where they go afterwards, right? So we also spoke at length about the importance of retaining these alumni networks and also making sure that they're not just alumni, but also, in a sense, ambassadors of these programs, and they can really show the added value of what they've learned in different places. So I think that's maybe a very tangible way of speaking to this excellent point on the social value and recognition.
Thank you. Any other questions you might have? Questions, comments? Yes, please.
Hello, Ilza from the Erasmus Student Network. Firstly, thank you to all of you. It was very interesting to hear the session outcomes. I have a quite broad question. So all the mentioned solutions I see are quite nice in idea. When we look parallelly at other programs that students can currently attend, we are seeing that the same issues are prevalent when thinking about degree inclusivity, such as student support. How can we use the European degree to support the challenges that students are already facing to make a generally better European higher education area? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for bringing this broad question. Dominika or Stefan? Dominika?
Yes, concerning the challenges that are being discussed in the scope of European degree, I see quite a lot of parallels on the discussions that we are already having concerning already existing programs, initiatives, and I especially would like to highlight here the Erasmus+. So the issues with housing, the issues with visa applications, generally the administrative barriers that students are encountering on their way to the mobility, but also during and after, I think we can actually use them more as a blueprint on what we can avoid while we've been introducing the European degree label and hopefully in the future the full European degree. So maybe since housing was one of the things that was present in outcomes of all the groups, if I may suggest some specific solutions we are having in our mind. So, of course, we can use a very simple expression that we need more money, but this, of course, can be quite elaborate on. So, for example, we can think of building partnerships between universities and municipalities that will guarantee more reliable, more accessible housing opportunities. Of course, we can think about keeping a percentage of rooms in the dorms reserved for international students. Maybe even we can work with the regional and national governments to ensure that more student housing will be built. And finally, we can work on a more specific measures and mechanisms to support housing options that are not fraudulent, because unfortunately in many regions finding a housing can be surprisingly easy, but then we will realize that the house doesn't even exist. There is no building in this place. The photos were altered and unreal. So yes, there's many different angles to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan?
Yeah, thank you very much for this very, very important question. And I'm really convinced that the discussion we are having about the possible European degree label will facilitate the cooperation between universities in the European education area. What do I mean by this? I see a clear parallelism to the European university initiatives. By the university initiatives and the European degree label, we are facing challenges of cooperation, and we try to get legal obstacles less important, or to get rid of them, to be very clear. The number of European degree labels at the end will be relatively small compared to all study programs in Europe. But if we succeed in getting accreditation, transnational education really based on trust, this will simplify the cooperation for all higher education institutional cooperations. And therefore, there is an added value of the discussion we have here for the joint programs that will become European degree labels, but it will also be easier for all joint programs who won't become a European degree label to be realized, and I hope that it will also make the cooperation in the field of just double degrees easier. So I see a real potential for simplification in accreditation built on trust, and that would be a major outcome of all the discussions we have since 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for a great summary. Izabela Grabowska, EU on Air, European Alliance, the last generation with the big pronunciation of AI in education. My point is that in the pledge of European degree, we should make sure that all forms of mobility are recognized and acknowledged, namely virtual, blended, and physical mobility. I would like to just make a reminder that in current Erasmus Plus programs, not every university recognizes virtual mobility. As in European alliances, we pursue the transnational virtual mobility through various combination of virtual campuses. It would be very important to make sure that partners of European degree who are engaged recognize all three forms of mobility, because for the future, and especially for students for Global South, I was in the group of Stefan discussing talents, and I'm myself migration scholar, so I do studies on daily basis on mobility and migration. For students from Global South, we should remember that it's not just one European Union. There are 28 member states with different legal pathways to get there. And we mentioned visas, but also there are residency, then employment permits. So it's very important if students from Global South is in one member state of the EU, can virtually, physically, and in a blendedly be mobile within the EU. It's therefore very important. So also for students from war zones, like we have many students from Ukraine who still stayed in Ukraine and they participate in virtual education. So bearing in mind that in many parts of the world there are still conflicts, virtual mobility will ensure that these students are included. So in this pledge, I would recommend strongly to include this statement on the recognition of the three forms of mobility, virtual, blended, and physical. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for underlining this important point, and I think it's something that is in the heart of the whole initiative of the European degree, so it speaks to all the solution labs. I think it has been explicitly coming up in Solution Lab 3 on inclusivity and accessibility. Domenica, would you like to briefly comment?
Yes, the recognition issues are nothing new when we talk about any form of mobility. According to data collected by Erasmus Student Network, by my organization, students are on usual, they have 28 ECTS points recognized, which is not the worst, but it's still not full and automatic. And we also, according to our latest survey from 2023, 2.6 students do not receive any of the credit recognized. So generally discussion on the recognition is of course, very complex issue that should be addressed by all stakeholders, and some specific legal aspects of this, and especially on the university level, I believe a lot of work should be done there. I think there maybe specific centralization of the efforts, leaving the way that a specific professor, specific person responsible for the course makes the final decision. I believe that would be quite crucial on the discussion on that. We also in my solution lab touched upon the virtual and blended formats, and our general conclusion should be that ECTS points assigned there should be realistic, should be adjusted to this type of mobility, and should be automatically recognized, since mobility should be treated equally to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so we have reached the end of our panel already. So I would like to really thank to our reporters for summarizing the very rich content of the labs. And I know I was there yesterday in the preliminary discussion on today's session, and yes, in some cases it was really seemingly painful to reduce the very rich content that you have all elaborated in the solution labs to this 3-4 recommendations per lab. So thank you for that. Thank you for representing your groups and being the voice of your labs. And also thank you for underlining the value aspects. And also I think the controversies, which I think is important. I'm coming from member state Hungary, where some dimensions of what European values are highly contested. So I think it's important to also talk about the disagreements, while I think it was also important and underlined in the panel that when it comes to European values, there is a consensus to refer to. But I think it's important to underline the value-driven element of the European degree label beyond being, of course, something as an important tool for students that they see to develop their careers. And also thank you all for actively participating in the discussion, either through Slido and through raising questions. So Joan unfortunately had to leave a bit earlier, but I would like to give a big applause to Dominika, Stefan, Josephine, and Yanis. Thank you. Yes, and we are heading to a coffee break, and in the next panel, moderated by Suzanne, there will be a policy roundtable on drafting the Florence Pledge. I'm looking at Gloria, our Master of Ceremony, if she would like to announce anything before the coffee break.
We'll reconvene here at 10:30, and we will have the final panel of the day, the policy roundtable on the Florence Pledge. So enjoy your coffee and see you in a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Please take your seat. We are now coming to the final panel of the day on drafting the Florence Pledge, a key step in turning our discussions into concrete commitments. While our moderators and co-facilitators have worked hard to streamline yesterday's inputs, it's also important to hear from stakeholder representatives whose insights will help shape meaningful and actionable outcomes. I'm now honored to welcome our moderator for some remarks, Susan Konze, Head of Unit for Higher Education at the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture of the European Commission. Susan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning, everybody. We are nearly at the end of this event, of the discussions of the last days, and we should now really wrap it up and come to the conclusion and a decision what should go into the Florence Pledge, something which was heatedly discussed over the last days. What we, as the participants of this European Degree Forum, would like to see there, what we think should happen in the next time. And listening to all the discussions yesterday and also this morning, I think I got the impression that we are now really ready to pick up on it and really to start implementing the European degree label and pave the way for a possible later European degree. Implementation, in a way to give credit to everybody involved in this process. Implementation is not easy. Implementation is really hard legwork. And implementation started already Tuesday with the first policy lab. And at that policy lab meeting in Brussels, 60 people were there from all member states, also from EFTA countries, stakeholder organizations, quality assurance agencies. They gathered to get the details on all the criteria for a European degree label, which have been already decided by the Council in May this year. So really see how to understand them, how to operationalize them. And while this work is ongoing, and there will be another meeting in January on this, and while we will discover some issues on the way, some problems, and we have to discuss, and while we, in the end, will find a solution to all these topics, we also need to keep the political movement to a European degree label ongoing. And this is what is this forum about here and what we are now entering into here with all the 160 people who have joined us here and all of you. So to define the needs, what has to happen now? To ease the creation of a joint European degree program and to make a European degrees labels a reality, with all their advantages, with all the impact we expect from them, what we link to them. So just a small recap, what we have seen, and we have prepared for you some background which should show up later on what came out of all the different discussions yesterday afternoon, and to have that in our memory when we are now discussing what we demand and what we want to do next. And I have also a little bit taken note from the Slido we had before, because that shows nicely what you all find important and what you are really putting high on the agenda. And if we look there, and just for a small recap after coffee for all of you, if we look at the high-level solutions, and I start now top-down and not bottom-up as before, we see we need a flexibility in implementation. We need to reduce barriers. We need to make the Bologna tools work and really implement them. We need joint commitment, and political will was also strong on the Slido show. We need stakeholder involvement. And what also popped up relatively early in the Slido, then became a little bit smaller, but I think still valuable, we need a fully fledged European degree. When we looked at the skills, enhancing skills within European degree programs, a strong message on the Slido was STEAM and STEM, or some said STEAM, not STEM, but this aspect of STEM was really strong. Transversal skills was strong on Slido. Citizenship skills were strong on Slido. Well-designed learning programs. And of course, European values are the core on what we are acting. They are not in question at all. They are what is the basis for European degree programs. When we looked at the attracting talent Slido, we saw a clear plea for the potential to attract talent with joint European degrees. And we saw that there needs recognition for that, there needs to be a support for students, there needs to be diversity. And there was also in the discussion, I think, a clear point that having a joint European degree, having a joint European degree label and having will ease the situation of all joint study programs. It will ease the situation of all higher education institutions. There might be only a few in the beginning, and at the moment it looks like a big story for a very few things. But I think we move higher education with it, and that is something which also came strong in the discussion before. And finally, and I think an important point made by many, is the whole question of inclusion. Inclusion, making it accessible to all students, but also making joint degree programs accessible to all higher education institutions. So having the support service, the housing students need, the financial support they need. So now we are going a step further. Now we are trying to translate this into what would need to be in a pledge, what need to be done by governments, what would need to be done by universities, higher education institutions, what do we expect from industry, what do we want to do with other stakeholder groups, what is really the way we now kick it off to make it happen and have the degree by mid-27. And for this work, I have a great panel with me, and I would like to invite on stage Lara Parr from the European Students' Union. I think many of you know her already. She is really representing the students' voice here in Europe, and therefore a key point to make a pledge happen and work. Ulla Preden from Eurussia, the European Association for Applied Sciences and Higher Education, looking especially at this type of higher education institutions, which also play a key role when we look at STEM education. And then, of course, Beatrix Busse, which you have already seen and heard to yesterday for EU for All, the community of practices of all European university alliances. And also she's very active in Coimbra, and she's the vice rector of the University of Cologne. And with these three fantastic ladies, we will now kick off the discussion, and we will certainly also involve you. Okay, starting. What should universities do now? Maybe that is a very clear question now with a panel like this. And maybe I could start with Ulla. Would you like to jump in?
Hello, welcome for this late session. And I'm really glad that I can represent the voice of universities of applied sciences. And actually, I think also more voice of labor market and businesses that we didn't maybe hear in this event that much, because actually cooperating with these partners is our nature. It's something when to build together these European degrees and joint degrees and labels, it's always the partners to this building up, and the role of employers is really valuable. It's not, we don't like, we are not in a position to be opposite with, that we don't consider what are the needs of students or what is the quality of education, but it goes hand in hand. But the biggest restriction for universities of applied sciences is that the rules are usually not equal in different countries, and it's much harder actually to have joint degrees when you are University of Applied Sciences, and all these quality assurance systems or legislative rules. So I think if these are eased up after these commitments coming together, discussions with different governments, universities are ready, University of Applied Sciences are ready to take next actions. And there has been a very good opportunity inside the alliances already to test it, also Universities of Applied Sciences, but they have struggled quite a lot with these different obstacles. And from my institution, we try to build up also joint degree. And again, it's not the will of universities or what we can offer and how to release these things. Usually, these are very concrete administrative or legal obstacles in the end that you are not able to do it. So at least we agreed, and we have also the position from Eurasia and University of Applied Sciences. They fully support this movement and aim to have European degree and label. And the biggest hope is that it eases also the situation for different universities of applied sciences in different countries, and we can do it together. And I think the programs are different. It was mentioned, I think, not enough that actually when the labor market is considered, the students who come, there was one mentioning of like that they could be experienced already, maybe a bit older, but they already work also. They come from wet system usually. Quite a lot of students already are working when they enter to these joint programs. So these have to be taken in mind, and I'm sure University of Applied Sciences are doing it and supporting also the students. There are different possibilities. Cooperating with the local governments is one thing, and also with regions, because we are very close to the regions, and I know that many of universities of applied sciences actually work like that, that they are not in their campuses, but they go away, they go more with their programs also closer to the field of work. So these regions maybe who don't have any higher education institutions and the possibility for students to be involved in these regions and also in like smaller. So because I want to say this as well, it was very important for me, and I was glad to represent Eurasia. Not everybody, not all the institutions never will be part of university alliances, and our institution isn't either. And but I think it's really important to share and to open up these kind of forums or whatever events we have also to other institutions, that it would be easier for others. Not everybody will have this funding and full support doing it, but when we share our experiences, this is the most valuable for universities. And I think sharing and organizing these kind of events, not only for universities of alliances who belong there, but also open up. This would be one of the key messages that helps building up these joint degrees. When we know how actually the university alliances already have struggled. We know some experiences, but probably not enough.
Thank you. So what we understand, universities of applied science are ready. They need the signal, get and go. What are with the universities, let's say the non-applied or all over? What is your picture, Beatrix, on the overall situation, and what universities should do as a next step to make it happen?
Well, first of all, I can also say that, I mean, for U4All, as the community of practice for the alliances, as well as also the Coimbra group, as you know, are fully for the European degree label and have pushed this, have worked on this, and we've also invested quite a lot of work on this now. And I think I will reply to your question, but I will also say what we need now, I think, because this is crucial. I think we can now move on and spread the word and really inform our universities, our communities and so on, that this is a new opportunity for very, very interesting ways of cooperating, for ways of realizing new degree programs. So I think this is a very special path with criteria, and I'll say a few things more about those again as well. So I think we need to spread the word, we need to communicate, we need to do this now and to say this is coming, a call is coming. All of us have been doing this in the alliances as well, and as you know, a number of universities and alliances have participated in the calls as well. That's why we have those criteria, that's why we are where we are. So what I would like to ask for is not to start again from scratch with some of the things that we see here on the slides. I think we have discussed them. Some are very general and broad and are not just specific to the European degree label, like housing and visa. So this is a general big thing anyway, and we need to address this, and I think this will give this a push to really solve those issues. My main point is that don't forget the scientists who actually have to do these courses and these labels. They have to do them, and therefore they must be in place. They must be ready and prepared, and they must get incentives also to do this with whatever programs will be announced and whatever, let's say, incentives we can use so that they are enabled to do this. Because doing a joint program is a complex issue, it takes time, we've discussed this. And I think what should be highlighted is what are the unique selling points now for this European degree label. We have it in the criteria. I also think this is our chance again to safeguard academic freedom. As I said yesterday, I would add research-based teaching and learning to it. I would add this because you need, you need to get the scientists, and they will want to transfer their knowledge to society through teaching as well. And everything else, the formalities, the accreditation needs to be catered for so that they can focus on, and we can focus, I will say we, because I see myself as a scientist as well, and adamant actually, they will focus on what's most important. But please, 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 let's not start the discussion again on a number of points we have already solved. And I would also like to suggest to extend this European label to smaller learning experiences. I did say that yesterday as well, to micro-credentialing, because I think that's very, very attractive to do it this way, and they can be done in a multilingual way. Of course, our European values will be safeguarded. And just one other thing again, on academic freedom and also on research and science competencies. Research and science competencies foster democracy. They foster what's in the European degree label, and therefore I think highlighting this much more than it's done now. I would prefer to have an additional criterion, but probably that's difficult, but highlighting this in the call and so on would be very, very good. And also, we haven't discussed this a lot, I think the digital transformation as well as the transformation of AI needs to be included here, and I think this would also be very attractive. So my answer to your question is not so much what universities should do now, because we are there and we have been working on this and we will be there and we will be pushing this, but it's more now what we need to be able to do this. And just one point on accreditation, I did say I would focus on quality culture more than on, formalistic ways of going about accrediting a study program. And I have to say something on the social sciences and the humanities. That's my final point. Again, they are not an add-on, and I don't like that they are embellishing let's say engineering and so on, or robotics. They are there for themselves and have something to contribute to this society. This is a standpoint both of For You For All and also the Coimbra group. I think that's very important to stress, and I say this as a linguist.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think it is a very positive news that universities and universities of applied science, higher education and institutions are so much ready to act, and I think this is something we should really take from this discussion and from these 2 days. But as we stay for a moment... Okay.
And Susanne, this is also our job to do the new study programs on the basis of our research. We have been doing this for
I mean, in this country for centuries. So I think this, I would say, is not the challenge. The challenge is the conditions, and that's why we have to move on, please.
Exactly. Coming to that point, but I absolutely subscribe to that. But let's stay a little bit for the moment at the universities and coming to our representative from the Students' Union. What would you think, inside of the context of the university, what would you see from your students' perspective? What would you like to see there in the context of the European degree?
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, and it's also even bigger pleasure to see also a lot of my colleagues, students, student representatives that are present here today and yesterday, and that were also very active in different sessions. And I think that they gave us really valuable feedback, and I think it's really important to make sure that the student voices are also heard, that their participation is enabled, and I think that they proved, and we proved once again, that students are also very constructive stakeholders and members of higher education. And when it comes to students, what they want, a lot of things that we have been discussing here, benefits of internationalization, opportunities for mobility, development of transversal skills, fostering democratic values, fostering European values. All of those things are actually the things that we as students want to see in all study programs. We want to see it at all of the universities, we want to see it implemented in all of the study programs, and one important thing that was also communicated here is that there is still a lot of obstacles. And that point is something that makes us a bit frustrated, I would say, because we also came to a conclusion that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have the wheel. We have Bologna tools, we have commitments. We need to clear the road to make this wheel be able to go around, to turn. So I think that what is important and what we see as a great value is using the European degree label and the work that we're doing here into focusing on removing the existing obstacles. And by removing them, starting from the universities that participate in these joint programs, starting with the universities that are part of the alliances, we also want to see this split over effect. On national level, we want to see the spread of these solutions across our countries, across our higher education institutions, across our universities. I would say that this is our main point. This is what we want to see, because we also discussed and we mentioned that talking about these joint programs and the number of the alliances, we talked about inclusivity. And first I will start with inclusivity in form of numbers. We're a membership-based organization. We have 43 member unions from 40 countries, representing the voice of 20 million students. In the European education area, we have 17.5 million students. We talked a lot about wanting to include students from both EU, outside of EU, and of course we agree with that. But we also want to see the effect of this label and the work that is being done here for majority of these students, for all of these students, but also for more of the institutions. And I think it is possible, and I think that with the work of the alliances, the big benefit that they have is that mutual collaboration. It's very important to have places like this to work on developing joint programs, just in a sense of alliance, of universities from different countries sitting down together and looking at what are the existing obstacles and how to solve them. And for sure, maybe it's much easier. We haven't managed to solve it at the European level in general. In theory we did, but in practice we see that there is still a lot of work that has to be done. But for sure the big benefit, and what we want to see also from universities, is coming together and finding a way to build the trust. We also listened and heard a lot about building the trust and the need to foster trust for recognition and for these programs to work. I think it's important to use also the opportunity to discuss about the real problems that are in the background of the lack of trust and how to solve it in this situation. Another topic that was mentioned quite a lot, and I think it's very worrying, it's questioning or the constatation that European values are being questioned. I think that this is also something where we should not debate. We know what are the European values, but the reality is that in some of the countries, those values are under attack. Those values are endangered. And I think this is also something that we have to talk about and that we have to discuss about and use this opportunity of collaboration to try to fix it, to find the solutions. I don't think the right place and the question is what are the values, we know what they are. The question is how to ensure that they are also the right for all of the students, but for all of the citizens to have them, to enjoy them. And coming back also to values, it's important to mention fundamental values, which are also have been confirmed within the Bologna process. Fundamental values in European higher education area, academic freedom, academic integrity, student and staff participation, but also responsibility of and for higher education. So that is also something that is very important to keep in mind, and it also brings us to the topics of inclusion, of accessibility, because I really like the point that was made at the presentation before. Education is a public good, and we need to look at education as a public good, and we need to look at students not just as a workforce, but also as members of our society, as the ones who will be creating our future, who will be influencing the world that we live in and who are doing that already. So I think it's also important to take that into consideration and to focus on developing inclusivity framework, which is one of the things that was discussed. We need to make sure that all of the students that we're talking about actually have the opportunity. And we pointed out a lot of issues: housing, access, scholarship, their availability, tuition fees, etc. It's important to make sure that we have clear framework that we agree with, that will be followed, that needs to ensure that these initiatives are accessible for students, that they can access them, and that all of the students that want can take part in these sort of initiatives.
Thank you very much. Well, just let me yes, a big applause. A point maybe from my side to mention, we have in May, the Council adopted a resolution on the European degree label. And it linked to it also a list of the criteria. And many of the things we are mentioning now are in the criteria, be it the values, be it the digital, and so on. So maybe we could leave this deep point a little bit aside. What I understand is now there is nevertheless a lot of questions to the governments on what governments have to do, and maybe also what the European level has to do to help everybody. We have in the Slido and in the reports from the workshops this morning, we had already a reference to the Bologna tools and to implement the Bologna tools in full and to make that happen, to work on recognition and on trust. We have also the point made by Beatrix that to improve the conditions for universities to implement that, and also to support the scientists there which are creating the joint degree programs, to give incentives and really to make this, to allow them doing their work in the way they would want to work and want to deliver on that. Is there, beside of these 2 points, we need the Bologna and we need conditions in which it would work, is there something you would ask governments also what they should do and what we would need from them?
Yes, I started with this also. I think in addition that if we consider now that all these tools would be implemented and all European approach for joint programs would be implemented in different countries, we wouldn't be probably here. We would do it already, all these things. And like from government or country levels, there are different countries, and we have to accept like the history is different on European level, how we have developed, but we share the same values, and especially in higher education, we share the same values. So universities of applied sciences actually what most expect is equal treatment with traditional research-intensive universities, that we don't have different rules like how we apply something or how we can cooperate or collaborate. And sometimes when we involve and we say this labor market needs, and in the end we understand that we don't know what the future of labor market will look like. And I think this is why all these programs need to be different. Some have to collaborate with employer side, and the others not, maybe because they are more different type. And also we shouldn't, I agree totally, it's not only engineering, it's also health sciences and other fields, and it's even arts. I mean, we can collaborate in so many different fields and they are all needed. But the main thing on government level is if we really say together, and Eurasia is supporting that joint degrees are important, we can share then much more, we can offer for students much more, and actually for employers much more. Also this recognition how different professions work. We have a common understanding what roles have physiotherapists in Estonia and what they have in Poland or in Spain. At the moment we have them differently. We have regulated these fields differently. So this joint degrees would help also in these professions that are very regulated, very close to the field of work, common understanding in Europe, and also the value of these professions. And we shouldn't compete. I never think that one is more important than the other. I think this is also the European value, that we understand each other more, that we understand that with basic research, it's important applied research as well. I mean, it's just different. We aim it differently. And so this European degree and the label, if it helps to get over these obstacles and to be more in common understanding, I think it's already has had a quite huge impact. In my mind, the university alliances, and if these actions help us to come together and also to speak up with our governments and with our politicians. It's also institutional role. We have to do it as well. It's not only somewhere somebody has to do it. We every day have to do it ourselves also. We have to say why it's important. And we are doing it actually quite a lot. And so then we will hopefully have more common understanding, and we can really apply these things and have better possibilities for our students, for our field of work, and also for whole Europe, and actually for more also on global level. I mean, it's not only Europe for sure.
I do think that what member states or governments, and this is also a complex thing to say and to generalize, I would say it's probably almost impossible because still of the diversity, which I think is also good and very important. That's why we are learning from one another. But I think for governments, it's now important to we've heard this, simplify some of the rules and to have trust in what we are doing with regard to accreditation, quality assurance, and also a quality culture. The example I mentioned is that, if there is one way of ensuring quality for a European degree label program, then in one country, then perhaps that's okay. And we've heard we have the European approach, of course. So why not try it out here and simplify it so that we can be at least faster in that process? And I think we also have to talk even more to each other. I think this is a crucial moment now of academic freedom, which I know that some of the member states are also very much worried about, in the sense that if you prescribe certain criteria and they are in there now, and I will come back to this, although I know this is a council resolution and it's basically done, and still, I think we have to make very sure that this fosters the European approach, fosters European competitiveness, but most importantly, the freedom of our academy, of our science. That is very important, and I think there has to be some communication and translation to show why this is the case, and there we have to work together, and we have to do this really well still. So we all have to do something, but for me, the simplification of the quality part, the assurance, the accreditation, and so on is very important. Not to do away with criteria for that process, but to not having to do it 3 times over and over again.
Thank you. Would you come in?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I would for sure agree with the need that I also mentioned at the beginning, which is the full implementation of already existing commitments where we have issues. But I think that when it comes to quality assurance and implementation of everything that European higher education area members have agreed to, there is still a lot of room for improvement. So for sure that is one of the preconditions. But if we're talking about truly inclusive, accessible, equitable access to joint programs, to international education in general, we also need to look at social policies, migration policies, etc. So I think that we also need to focus on raising the awareness of what are the requirements and needs of students that we want to include. So I wouldn't limit it only on higher education policies, but also connect it to support services, to opportunities to get support when it comes to housing, to student grants, etc., where still in a lot of countries international students don't have equal rights or don't have rights at all to access this kind of opportunities. So I think it's important to look at the bigger picture and to look at also what are all of the areas that we need to cover to make the initiative truly inclusive and successful.
Thank you very much indeed. That is something probably we cannot solve only with a joint degree or with a European degree, but we can solve overall and have to address the accessibility of higher education and the support services for students. Beatrix wanted to come in briefly and then have one last question to the panel before I open for the floor.
Just again, I think it's now important to really focus on the USP of the European degree label that then moves to the European degree. I think this has to be our focus, and this is something that then has to be translated to the member states even more forcefully. So it's not interfering in any kind of federal state law and so on. This is very, very important to do, and this needs, again, translation. So please, let's just focus on this now. Let's not redo the work we have done already. Let me repeat this, because we are talking about joint programs which we've had before. So now it's this European degree label, and that's important.
Thank you, indeed. One last question here for the panel, but only if you want to come in. We had also we had a little bit of a discussion on the employers, because we want to have that these degrees are useful for young people and useful, and they are translated and understood on the labor market, are understood by employers. Unfortunately, we couldn't win too many employers to come here today, which is certainly a gap in the discussion, and we need to reach out more to them. And that was also mentioned in the discussions over the last days. There is an extra need. Is there from one of you from the panel a strong point to say what we need to do to reach out to them? What are possibilities? Who could do that best? Who is our best ally in making this known? And probably Eurassia is.
Yeah, I can say at least last experience is 2.5 years at the Eurassia board, and really communicating a lot with different countries and different universities of applied sciences. They have very strong connection with the employer side. And when we had this discussion inside my own country where I'm coming from, in Estonia, so we actually discussed that our experience can help. What we have done also, what vocational education schools have done with really strong connection with employers. If we share also this kind, like what we have done and what we have done maybe differently. And I say once more, we don't have to like cross the border that now we are going like totally to other side. It's not all about employers and labor market, but to have really the understanding that some of the fields need really very good and very strong connection. We cannot do nothing without this professional side or this apprenticeship side and having these very practical skills. You cannot do it like all online in health sciences, basically, at least on a very like basic level, and it depends really of a field. So we have to accredit this also, that fields are different, the needs are different, but to involve them in discussions, probably we can use the knowledge of University of Applied Sciences more, how we have done it and how we have involved, and also maybe to share how these joint degrees have been involved, how in these special programs the employers are now involved developing the programs. And I was really glad to see that in this breakout session that it was mentioned not only offering this internship, that is, of course, and validating the relevance of the programs, but also already from the beginning, in some of the programs that are really needed, that are valued by the employers, we do the cooperation from the scratch, like from the beginning.
Okay, I will try to hurry. I think that of course, for this collaboration, there needs to be openness and willingness from both sides. But I think that what is also important is, and what students are looking at, and really paying attention, especially in the recent years, are also the values, not just in a sense of course, academic values and values that the institution applies, but they're also closely paying attention to who are institutions partnering up with. So I think that also for those kind of partnerships, it's important to include students into the discussions, to take their input and to build these partnerships together. I think this is really important point. And another one also being when it comes to partnerships, when it comes to internships, etc. It's important that these internships are paid and that students also have a support and opportunity to learn, to develop their skills, develop themselves, but that approach is also student-centered.
Thank you. That's a very important point.
I like that a lot. So first of all, I do think we are in our ecosystems and we do have, of course, the connections, to the sometimes called outside world, although I feel I work quite a lot as well. So it's very weird sometimes, how this is constructed as if we are not in a kind of working employability environment. I also think that for the study programs and the quality criteria, we have to show the quality of a study program. There always has to be the employability aspect in it. So how does a study program prepare? So we have this in there. We also have at Cologne University audits with when we create new study programs, audits with, the outside world. Let's put it this way. I'm exaggerating, but also with companies and so on. So we do have this. I attended the Education Summit last week, and there was a leadership person from Mercedes. So we do have these connections, and I also know, especially from companies like Mercedes, Katrin Lehmann and others, they're very open to listen to us as well. And you just said, open to both sides. Universities, again, have their values as well and the way they work. And again, this is the freedom of science. So sometimes, we are also not just reactors to the world or to labor needs, but also creating labor needs through our research and creating topics that will be relevant in like 10 years. And I will choose just one example from the humanities. If we hadn't had astrobiology, nobody would have been able to deal with the situation in Mosul now, and this is a very, very small field and discipline. So I'm just saying we also need the freedom to pursue, let's say, risks and to pursue, let's say, educational programs where somebody might think, really, do we need this? But that might be relevant in 10 years. And I think this is the tension we have to hold. Therefore, inviting everybody, creating arenas, as we call them in Uniwell, to discuss exactly that is very important. And education is also a process.
Thank you. I think this is now the right moment to open to all of you and your points you would raise and would like to see in the pledge and which were not mentioned yet or which you see differently. So please, the floor is open to you. See, yes, Timothy, could someone bring him a microphone?
Thanks a lot, Timothée Touri, European University of Technology. I'd like to thank you, Lana, for your words regarding inclusiveness and true inclusiveness. This is something we are very sensitive at. Because let's make a calculation, just an order of magnitude. In the best case, with this joint European degree label, how many students per year would get this label? A couple of thousand? Let's dream a dozen of thousands. But compared to the more or less 4 million students who are graduated yearly in Europe, there is clearly a problem of inclusiveness. And these criteria, deep, true criteria, true multilingualism, true European values, true mobility, we need to offer that, if possible, to as many students as possible. Yeah. So the question is, could we go one step further? This is a pledge. Could we give this criteria and this label and further European degree to any kind of curriculum that would meet really the criteria, and not only to the tip of the edge, this couple of thousand of few students, that's nice for them, but we should not forget more than 99% of the other students.
Okay. Maybe we collect some questions. Are there any other additional questions? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for this fascinating panel and for all the points raised. I very follow up on the Beatrix point about acknowledging the role of researchers and scholars as teachers in the European degree programs. And my idea would be, why not to link better European programs like Horizon Europe and the next programs with the European degree. The results of the EU programs could be presented there because they are highly linked. And the second idea for the pledge would be connected to the final stage, because we talk about employers, but we need to consider different types of employers: business, civil service, international organizations. And the question is about portability of these skills, not only recognition, but also portability of skills which European degree would bring. And portability will be different in local economies, local businesses and local labor markets, and international, transnational labor markets, civil service, foreign services, NGOs, and so on. So we need to also think about that. And again, maybe better link with services we have, like European employment services. We have EURES. Why, at the moment of the pathway to job placement, also consider this, that we have already services and institutions which we can better use. And I do not agree fully that we don't know how labor market would look like. We do lots of predictions within Horizon Europe, and that's not that we don't know everything, but we know trends. And I'm leading Horizon Europe as a scientific coordinator, and I need to tell you that we know that automation and AI will take over, and this is the only option to decrease vacancy rate. But this option cannot act alone. It acts the best in the policy mix when it's with reskilling and upskilling. And we need to think with European degree not only about the beginning of the education process, but also lifelong learning. that we will have mid-careers people who would need to come back somehow to the education, to reskill and upskilling for the future labor market. So I would like to also that lifelong learning will be acknowledged in the European degree. And thank you very much again for this forum. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one question here, and then we go back to the panel to answer.
Thank you. I'm Katarina from the European Students' Union, originally from Estonia. I would like to actually build upon the first question or remark. I would like to maybe the panel to reflect a bit on how we can actually widen the access for the institutions as well to this European degree label, because as Ulla already mentioned, it's not really accessible yet for every institution to become a member of an alliance, for example, to build joint degrees. So how do we actually reflect also in the pledge to this difficulty from the institution side to actually make sure that more students get the benefit of this internationalization and the European degree label? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think 2 questions or 2 points I would like to raise before handing over to my colleagues here on the panel is that, first of all, to clarify that European degrees are developed at the moment a lot in alliances, but they can be developed from all consortia of universities, so they are not linked to alliances. So there is not a limit to that. The other thing is that, of course, already existing joint degrees which fulfill the criteria can immediately apply, starting from 26 to get the label. And I think this is also an important point to make. So we don't have to start now with a degree and then only years later and la la la. No, not at all. It is possible for everybody who is already doing this work to present this program to the agency deciding about the accreditation and then to get the label. But now I would like to hand over to my panelists and maybe each round about a minute so that we stay in time for closing this panel.
Do this very briefly. So just some figures in the alliances. We have created 306 joint study programs and 104 degree programs, just saying this again. And I do think, answering to Timothy's question, I do think this is also a quality process, because what you could be doing now is look at those again, and this is fantastic, because then it's moving, and we could all include this in our quality processes at our universities to check, do we fulfill the criteria? And this is the communicative process that the universities have to do now, and also the alliances. And coming to that question on how can we include other partners, you have answered this, because this is then also possible. I mean, as associated partners in alliances, and this is their new study programs are not excluded from that. So that's very good, I think. And also part, again, of a quality process and of a creation of a new program. So I think that's very good if you fulfill the criteria. So, and on Elisabetta's concept of course, research, including research, I couldn't agree more. One of the reasons why we've written this paper for the European University Alliances is because we constantly have to justify that we are also doing research. But there is no research without education, and the other way around. This is our genuine task. This is the USP of universities in general and of higher education institutions. So I think it simply has to be included. And this compartmentalization that is practice is just no longer timely and won't bring us to anything. And that's why we have highlighted the deep cooperation as the asset for European university alliances and as a model for Europe. So it's about both. So I couldn't agree more, and that's why I would like to see this in the pledge more, that anything we are doing is research-based, and that an innovation journey is a path forward to do this, but of course with caution, because we also need to help our researchers to move towards this path. Not anything we do has to lead to an output right away. And what is an output? I think I'd like to discuss this as well.
Yes, I actually I think that all these comments were very valuable, and the value of this discussion of European degree is like holistic, basically. It's like seeing very wide role of different partners, and in the end, what I don't, it's easy to say that yeah, it's open, but actually you do it very well when you have additional support. Otherwise, it's very hard. The other role is actually this legislation. I would say once more, if there wouldn't be so many obstacles in this process, I mean, like you do it 3-4 years and in the end you really find out that, oh, just they said no on ministerial level, so it doesn't matter. And the third thing, I think that in Pledge also, that was brought out in breakout session, the role and collaboration with quality assurance agencies. This is very important because I have read different reports why we cannot do it and all the statistics where we don't follow the Bologna process, but why we are not doing it, what we should do, like to overcome these obstacles. I think more maybe like direction to this, what to do to overcome these obstacles, not to just list all these obstacles. We have listed them, I think, several years already. We know all the things that are not going like that. So this would really help. What we can do to overcome these quality assurance obstacles, I would say it's very important and it would help a lot. Thank you.
So, for me as a student, joint programs, different opportunities for internationalization seemed very cool, very interesting. The same was for a lot of my friends. But for a lot of us, it felt like a dream. For a lot of students still today, it feels like unreachable dream. There is still a lot of barriers, and I'm very happy that this is also one of the main conclusions and points of this event. There is still a lot of barriers, and we need a real need for inclusion, for working on developing inclusivity framework. Inclusivity framework was also part of the first communication on European University Alliances. It was not followed through up until now, but I think this is the moment to bring it back, to rediscuss it, and maybe I would also like to challenge the Commission when we're talking about pledges. We really want to see it as part of the criteria for the alliances, as something mandatory to achieve the financing, part of the agreements, and something that each alliance also need to adapt to and develop. And I think this also answers the questions from the first day. What is the potential and what is the difference and added value? And we really want to see the added value in making these dreams and these aspirations for a lot of students. And I would see the needs of citizens of today and tomorrow for the internationalization, for these experiences to become a reality. We really need to commit into creating the environment that allows them to do it. And on this note, we actually already taken steps into collaboration. The project that has been recently approved, Install, we want to focus on this social dimension of the European University Alliances. We are collaborating with a lot of alliances, with a lot of institutions. So we would also be very happy to share the work and the findings that we find there. And the goal is also to develop the draft and first layout for the inclusivity framework. And I really hope that when we're talking a pledge, we can also pledge to do our best to ensure that this is something that's truly accessible and life-changing and impactful for a broad student population. And one more thing I would like to add is also when we're talking about achieving all of these commitments, we also need ownership. We can see clear feeling of ownership from the side of the alliances, from the universities that are part of the alliances, from the side of the Commission. But I think that we still see some stakeholders who are very important into achieving this mission, that they don't feel the ownership. And I have to say, it's nice to see a lot of students who are part of this initiative, who have experienced these joint programs, work of the alliances. But when we talk about the numbers and majority of students, we still have a lot to work to do to make them feel the ownership. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that is also a key point at the end. We are a little bit under time pressure and we have to conclude. First of all, I would like to really thank the three panelists here, and I would like to invite you to give them a big applause for their work and their discussion. Then, what will happen now? So, based on all our discussions over yesterday, today, we will now draft the pledge. We will send it to you on Monday, to all participants of this event. We would like to invite you to give your feedback on by Thursday, so that if something is missing, something we haven't grabbed, not coming with something new, of course, it has to be something which we discussed here together, but maybe we have misunderstood, or maybe we have not sufficiently underlined one point or the other. Please come back with your comments, and then we will publish the pledge, and we will try to win as many supporters as possible behind this pledge to make this thing working and to implement the European degree label by mid-26. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our panelists and to our moderator, Susan Cohns, for guiding such a constructive discussion. We have heard concrete ideas that bring us closer to a vision of learning without borders. And now I would like to give the floor to Director General Arinkilde Hansen to deliver the closing address. Please give a warm welcome, Director General. The floor is yours.
Thank you again, Claudia, and dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this very first European Degree Forum, I really want to thank you very warmly for all the energy you have put into this, all your insights, and you know the palpable ambition that I have felt over this day and a half that we've been together. We've indeed heard from an extraordinary diversity of voices, universities and alliances, students, ministries, quality assurance agencies, and industry partners, even if I did take note of your plea to increase the involvement of business. And we will indeed together also explore how we do that. Together you've shown that while perspectives may differ, we are certainly unified and united by a shared conviction that higher education in Europe must become truly borderless. As a community, we must seize the momentum, we must create the conditions, as we heard, to make mobility, cooperation and exchange hallmarks of European higher education even more than it already is today. Through deeper cooperation between universities, through building further joint programs with the best that higher education institutions have to offer, so that indeed our universities can attract the best talent needed to power our union of skills and a more competitive, sustainable and prosperous future. But also, as we also heard from many of the panelists, adding values to society at large and keeping our democracies strong. Our discussions have shown that the question is no longer whether we need a joint European degree, but how we make this opportunity a reality. We have explored what the joint European degree label can achieve as a first step, a tool to provide visibility to excellence, to innovation, to cooperation, building inclusiveness, of course, at all levels of higher education. I did hear that there was a moderate optimism prevailing, because to go further, we must indeed do more to remove the existing barriers that hold us back. Complex recognition procedures, fragmented quality assurance, and rigid frameworks. And we also, and there was a strong call for this, we also must simplify the conditions, and that is very part of tearing down the barriers to this free-flowing education offer that we want to create. The Joint European Degree label will be available from mid-2026. It will show what is already possible when institutions and education systems work together. And the Florence Pledge that you have all been busy co-creating at this very first European Degree Forum is indeed the fruit of your collective work so far. It's both a declaration of intent and it's a roadmap for action. It sets out the shared commitments for all actors to keep the conversation alive, to share results, highlight good practice, and get on with the work. So I invite all of you to endorse it, to use it as a reference point for your institutional or national initiatives, and to promote it across our community. Once it's been finalized, as Susanne explained, the pledge will be available online after the forum, supporting institutions who want to commit to it. But most important, of course, now it's about translating the commitments into reality. We, on the side of the European Commission, will continue to foster cooperation and exchange among our community, bringing us hopefully closer to our common goal. And in the coming weeks, very concretely, we will have 2 new Erasmus Plus calls for proposals being published to support the uptake of the Joint European Degree label. Together, the calls will provide a total of 21 million euro to support the trailblazers that we need to transform European higher education and make the European degree a reality. So the work of the Policy Lab will also continue. And as I was saying, by mid-2026, we will have the first national processes for the label in place also so that it can be awarded. And I said it already in my introductory remarks when we started the forum, it will really be decisive to make the award of the first European degree labels very visible. And I hope you will all help to do so. Let me conclude on a note of gratitude to our speakers, to our moderators, and to our organizers, and of course to our hosts here at the European University Institute. Thank you so much for making this first forum a success. We can certainly learn, and we will draw a lot of lessons from this first forum as we move forward. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your dedication. The journey towards a joint European degree is a long, winding road, but I'm convinced we will get there because there are so many good reasons to make it happen. So let's continue to generate the momentum to do so. Every step brings us closer to a more integrated, but also a more inclusive and competitive European higher education area, enabling, as our Executive Vice President Minzato said in the beginning, more students to benefit from the very best that Europe has to offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director General Henrik de Hansen, for these motivating and inspiring messages. This brings us near the end of this forum. Over the last 2 days, we have heard from member states, academics, students, stakeholders, and we had the opportunity to co-create a vision for the future. We hope this will be the first of many occasions to meet and to bring this important initiative closer to its realization. Looking ahead, I would like to remind you that this is just the first, but certainly not the last European Degree Forum. Information about the next forum will be shared by the European Commission in the coming months and will also be available on the dedicated webpage. Thanks to your contribution, the Florence Pledge will be now finalized and shared with you in the coming days. In addition, a short survey will be circulated so you can share your feedback and help improve the next edition of this event. I feel honored to have led this magnificent cohort, and thank you again for your participation and for your attention. My sincere thanks go to the forum organizer, the European Commission's Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, and the European University Institute's Florence School of Transnational Governance, and also to all our distinguished guests. The first European Degree Forum will certainly not be the last, so this is not a goodbye, it's an arrivederci.